Heather Whaling, welcome to the Carrie Croft Show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, it's fun.
So you and I met at a coffee shop.
We did.
Just to frame up context for people. Ryan Schick, love you, Ryan Schick, the Ultimate Connector.
Ultimate Connector.
We see you at Crimson Cup. He says, this is a person you need to know. I reach out to you on Instagram. Next thing you know, we're sitting together in Franklinton having coffee, and you knew every single person that walked in.
It was funny. It doesn't always happen that way, but it was very funny.
I'm like, am I here with the mayor of Franklinton? I was like, wild.
So first of all, I love Franklinton. So I love what I can do, meetings over there, go to events, anything like that. And then I really appreciate so many of the people who have invested so much like time and ideas into reimagining what Franklinton can be and making it like such a special place.
And I think we can thank also Brett Kaufman and Gravity for that, for improving the atmosphere, right?
Yeah, there's been so many people who have been working over there for just years and years and years to improve the neighborhood.
Brett Kaufman, I mean, really, could you get any better? Could you get any cooler? Were we at one line?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Just want to make sure we're giving the right shout out.
Yes.
So along with being a mother of one very cute boy.
Thanks.
Very cute. And what is his name?
Evan. No, he just turned 10.
And so you're a single mom and you have your own business.
I do.
Just hearing that mouthful, right? Anybody out there is like, wow, that is a woman that can multitask and really drive to a goal. So let's start with Geben Communications. And let's start with the inception of this company and sort of the mission and purpose behind why you started it.
So I had worked for other people's PR agencies for about a decade. I'm one of those very strange people. Like, I majored in communication. I use my communications degree still today. Had worked for other people's agencies, was living in Orlando, working for an agency there around 2007, 2008, when social media started to become a thing. I was apparently like the geekiest person in the office, and they told me to go figure out like what is Twitter and MySpace and Facebook and why are clients asking about it and how does it relate to what we do. And they were really great and gave me a lot of leeway that basically if I could find a nonprofit that wanted to experiment with the intersection of PR and social media, I could do the work pro bono and we could all learn together and have good impact at the same time. So I created a Twitter account and a blog and started sharing what I was learning along the way, and then was getting invited to speak at conferences around the country about this intersection of traditional and digital communication. And that was really great because I could see what other agencies in other parts of the country, how they were building services around this and how they were incorporating it into their offering. And so I thought I had found this really great growth opportunity for the agency. I set up a meeting with the partner in charge of business development, and I will never forget. I'm like sitting on the couch in his office, and I like make my pitch of why we should build services around this and how we can make it a great offering for clients. And he looked at me and he was like, Heather, no one here is ever going to make money off of social media. And I was like, what? And so that was like the moment where I was like, okay, this is probably not quite the right long-term fit for me. But it was 2009 at this point. So like height of the recession, not a lot of people were hiring. They certainly weren't hiring PR people. We were married at the time. I'd been living in Orlando for almost 5 years. So I knew I wanted to come back to Columbus, but I didn't have a network here. But I had built a really good network on Twitter, ironically. And so was starting to get some offers to do some consulting. And so I thought, like, well, I'll take a little bit of a leap and I'll start Geben. And maybe someday I'll have like 2 or 3 people who work for me, but we'll just see what happens.
And then fast forward today.
Fast forward now. So that was 2009 when I started it. And so now we've got about 30 people on our team. 2/3 of them or so are based here in Columbus, and we've got other people in other parts. We do, half our work is PR, half our work is digital. We do really great work with a lot of nonprofits, for-profits. The word Geben means to give in German. So since the beginning, it was really important to me that we do mission-driven work and really help improve the communities that we live and work in and help organizations accomplish their missions. So we're very focused on accelerating growth and impact.
When I talked to you at the coffee shop, what struck me the most was like, how do you take plan B when life kind of throws you a curveball that's that's catastrophic? When life throws you a really hard punch, how can you look at it and say, okay, this just imploded, and here are my pieces, and this is how I'm going to pick up and move forward. So let's talk through, you get married, you own this company, and then you have a baby. And then inevitably what happens next?
Yeah, so I started the company in 2009, had Evan in 2013, and the Geben at the time was like 4 people, so it was still a very small company. Probably about when Evan was about 9 months old or so, my then husband moved out. And he is just in Grandview, and we're very good co-parents now. So we've had some time to get much better at this. But at the time, it felt like everything was imploding. Like the rug had been pulled out from under me. I have a newborn baby, a tiny company, and I'm just trying to figure out, like, how do I keep the pieces moving forward? And I think what I learned is that in a lot of ways, Geben became like my safe space, like where it felt like everything else around me I had no control over, like nothing was going right, or what I thought to be right at the time. Geben was the space where like I could show up every day. I knew what I was doing. I knew I was really good at it. And because I had this business, I was economically self-sufficient. And so then as we were going through the divorce process, I was able to very intentionally make decisions about what do I think is best for Evan and I without having to worry about like, how am I going to keep a roof over our heads, or how am I going to keep food on the table? And I think that was a very motivating experience for me to really focus on like, how do we help more women become economically self-sufficient so that when they're faced with any kind of decision, they can make the decision that's actually best for them without having to have a dependency on someone else for financial support alter that decision-making process.
Taking yourself back to that time when he was super young and you're heartbroken, are you the type, because I know what type I am. I'm a cut and slice and put your body in a trunk type. Like I am not okay. Okay. And I know how hard it is. I got separated for a year. And I remember how I felt and how it was so hard for me to be anywhere near where I knew I could be. I mean, I was so tested. You seem like a way nicer person than me. Like, did you go through a phase where it was like kick and scream and like totally like, how am I going? Or were you kind of tempered and measured? You just strike me as such a like even keeled, methodical person. I'm trying to think about how you were to handle a situation like that.
Well, so this happened, 9 years ago at this point. So I've had a lot of time to get used to it. I've worked with a mindfulness and meditation coach for probably 7 or 8 of those years. And so that has helped. So what I would say is I think I fought really hard for my marriage as we were going through it. So I was not someone who just said like, okay, we're done. That's fine. Like I did fight really, really hard. And maybe even looking back now, harder probably than I should have fought. I should have just said like, all right, this is not good or healthy. And like, let's just be done. But I had a newborn baby and like, I thought like, well, no, you should like fight for your family. So I don't regret that I fought really hard, but I fought really hard. But then I like, okay, clearly plan A is not happening. And so I need to get on board with plan B or figure out what the heck plan B even is. But there was a time where like I was not a very high functioning human. Like I lost 20 pounds. Like I didn't have 20 pounds necessarily to lose, right? So like I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping very well. I was really just like, I would wake up, spend some time with Evan, go to work, come home, spend some time with Evan, go to bed, and like just trying to go through the motions of every day. And like, I was not my best self at all.
You weren't necessarily okay,
no.
but you got through. And can I resonate with that? Where it's like, when is bedtime?
Yeah.
When is Ambien? Like I would take Ambien literally. I'd be like,
oh, I didn't do that.
I did. Like Ambien helped me through like that time where I would be like, okay, I can just go to sleep and not think about it. So like, for people out there right now who are facing down the barrel of like single mother or father for whatever reason, or maybe are just new into it, how scary that was for you, because you have a picture of the way your life is going to be. You have this baby in your arms, you have the mom, dad, whatever. And then when you finally had to stare at it and be like, okay, it's me and it's Evan. Do you remember kind of being so scared of how to like color all that in? Or were you just like, all right, like plan B, we're going to attack this and we're going to find joy and we're going to do this?
Yeah. And I think to be fair, so Evan's dad is still here and very much in the picture, and we share custody. And so we're very good co-parents now, which I think has been really helpful. So there was a book, so Sheryl Sandberg, after her husband died, wrote this book called Option B. And in it, she talks about, I think it was maybe like her brother-in-law or someone gave her this advice of like option A is no longer available. And so now you just have to kick the shit out of option B. And that's where the name of the book came from. And so my team at Geben made a sign for me in my office that says like kick the shit out of option B.
That's very cool.
And
right?
It was awesome. And I think about that a lot. I think sometimes we all get so hung up on like, we create in our mind this narrative and we become very attached to that narrative. And really, we have to release our attachment to the outcome because we have no idea what's going to happen. Somebody could get hit by a bus, right? Like you have no idea what the outcome is actually going to be. And we create so much, for me at least, I created so much anxiety because I was so resistant to the change initially. That's what ended up leading me to work with Juan Alvarez, who's my mindfulness and meditation coach, and he is amazing, was that I realized that I was like carrying around all this negative energy and I needed to let that go because it was preventing me from being the mom I wanted to be and the business leader I wanted to be. And I had to figure out how to like find a healthy way to process that negative energy so that I could let that go and then move on to this, in this new path and create and design a life that I love. And I love my life now. Like, did I go into marriage thinking I was going to get a divorce? No, but I also love my life right now. And so I don't regret any of it.
And I just teared up over here. I don't know if you saw that or not, but I got real emotional because that hit for me big time right now where I'm at in my life. I'm at a major crossroads and I feel like I'm a very risk tolerant person. And I think crushing the shit out of plan B is so relevant to so many people out there. It's like people fight so hard for just what they think or what they're in. It's like what they think should happen in their mind or what they're already currently in. And it's this resistance to that when really if you just maybe just like take a look over the ledge, like this is no longer an option for me, just jump. But it's so much easier said than done.
Yeah. And I think what I've learned is if you are clinging so hard to something that is clearly not working, then you're not creating the space to let in whatever the actual right thing really is.
And what a real miss, a tragedy, truly.
Yes. You're missing the thing that you're actually meant to be doing or the relationship you're meant to be in or the experiences you're meant to be having because you're clinging so hard to something that's not working. And at some point you just have to release and see what else comes your way. I am a big believer that the universe gives you like what you need when you need it, and you have to put yourself in a position to be able to receive that. And if you're clinging to something that's clearly not working or an unhealthy relationship or a job that's a bad fit or whatever, then you're not putting yourself in the position to receive what is actually meant for you.
And that just goes for so many facets in life, every facet, right? So like just dialing into this divorce facet, right? That had to be a muscle you had to build. So I'm sure in the beginning, right, when you're dealing with co-parenting with this person, you probably had to really check yourself sometimes where you're like, okay, Heather, like, we're going to do this. We're going to communicate. We're going to do this. You remember kind of building that. And now looking back on it, you're like, well, hell yeah, you're proud. You're proud of what you've created. Some people out there who have been divorced and you hear me out there, divorced 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, and you're still in this toxic, weird inability to co-parent. Right? So like being able to truly look at that and be like, okay, this happened. It sucks really bad. How do we make the best of this?
Yeah. So Juan actually gave me the best piece of advice as I was navigating all of this. He said, all I can do every day is think about how do I show up as the best co-parent I can be. So I can't control anything else. And thankfully, my former husband is a very good co-parent and I think also tries to show up as a very good co-parent. So I'm really grateful that we have done that piece. But it was hard at the beginning, like, right? You're going through a divorce. There's a lot of emotions mixed up in that. Like, I don't think we were always the best like communicators at the beginning of it, but we have really, I think, worked hard on figuring that out. And I think I've gotten into a much better place. And for me, the piece I try to focus on is like, what is the element of this that I can control? How can I show up the best person or the best co-parent that I can be in this situation? But I think that advice is applicable anywhere, right? Like even if you're thinking about like at work, you can't control everything that's happening around you at a company. All you can control is how can you show up and do the best job that you can do for your role. And if you're doing that, then you have to release attachment to outcomes and expectations and everything else.
And doesn't that sound simple?
It sounds simple. It's really hard. It's taken me a very long time to get to this point.
You need a wand to like help get you there, right? Let's talk, because you brought up wand at the coffee shop too. Yeah. And I ended up, I got sidetracked, but now that we're back on Juan, so describe Juan and like what is it more of a sit down therapy thing, or are there multiple components to what he does?
So Juan is amazing.
Okay. Hi, Juan. I think I'll probably meet you someday, hopefully.
I think you should have Juan on this show, actually. Yeah. So Juan and I have been working together, I think, for like 7 or 8 years. We meet every Friday morning now. So Friday morning at 9 is my standing weekly Juan session. And it's like the best thing that I do. So it is probably the best investment I've ever made in myself. It has completely transformed how I think about parenting, how I show up as a leader at Geben, how I think about like my involvement in the community, how I think about relationships of all different kinds. Like it's transformed every element of my work. And what it really focuses on, for me, at least what I get out of it, is the mindfulness and awareness and intentionality. And so instead of being driven by your ego or negative energy, like how do you stay very centered and very present and then allow that to sort of help you move through your day or your week or your experiences? But he's great.
Is he more though, is he doing any sort of meditation with you, or is it all just like a therapy session?
So his sort of his practice is built around meditating. So if you are working with Juan, the idea is that you are probably meditating, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people are really doing it daily, but like maybe daily. But I probably try to meditate like 3 or 4 times a week. And then I'll do like micro meditations during the day. So if I know I'm going into a meeting that's probably going to be a hard meeting, like I'll try and take a few minutes beforehand just to like do some deep breaths, or so think about it throughout the day. But then in our sessions, it's really whatever I bring to the table that I want to talk about. And so sometimes it's talking about boundaries. Sometimes it's talking about a challenge I'm facing at work. Sometimes it's talking about, you know, if I'm feeling anxious about something, like what do I do with that? And, or how do I navigate that? And it's often, you know, release the messenger, but receive the message, and then kind of breathe your way through it.
Yeah.
It's a very simplified version of it, but
you know, it's interesting, meditation, right? Like, I think it has gotten way more prevalent in terms of people talk about it more. And, you know, when I went to Bali, it was the first time I ever sat down in a group and had to meditate. I don't think I've ever been more, that's not true. I have been more uncomfortable, but it was a very uncomfortable thing for me.
Really?
Very uncomfortable. I'm in a hut with all these you know, they're weird. I'm not weird, right? You know, you have this whole thing. There's like 30 of us in a circle, and Alicia Chong, who is just, I mean, she's like a wand. I mean, she's unbelievable. We started with like 5 minutes the first day, and then you lead up to like an hour or like 4. I was like, there's no way I'm sitting here for like 50 minutes to meditate. Like, I was like, what in the heck, right?
Yeah.
And that practice, although I don't do it anymore the way I should, was so, I mean, it was so releasing. Like it really does do something. I just kind of wish it was less of like this polarizing thing, like, oh, meditation, you have to have like a room and a pillow and a place. You don't. Like what you just said, you could literally be in your office, and if you're feeling angsty, meditation could just be sitting and finding your breath and just letting yourself release all of the angst. That's all meditation really is, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple different ways to think about it, because I think it's sort of like going to the gym, right? Like you have to put in the work to then be able to use the muscles.
Yeah.
And so I think the practice of meditation, so the consistent meditating, 10 or 15 minutes, I don't think it has to be a long time. It doesn't have to be 50 minutes, right? 10 or 15 minutes a day, every other day, helps you build the muscle, so that then when you find yourself in a difficult situation, you have the awareness to say, okay, I need to sit and breathe for a minute, or I need to not, I'm feeling anxious, I need to not make any big decisions right now, or I need to not react based off of this fear or frustration that I'm feeling. But I think if you're not doing the kind of ongoing building of the muscle to have the awareness, you're not then equipped with the skills to know how to use the meditation practice or the mindfulness practice in those difficult moments.
Yeah. So you do commit to it on a weekly basis. I need to be
probably
more.
not as regularly as I should, but I try to do it like 3 times a week. And then I do yoga probably like 4 times a week, and I journal at least twice a day every day.
God bless you.
But I have to.
Damn it, I get mad at people that journal.
I love it.
There's part of me, well, first of all, I have I think I have a problem. Like, and I'm being serious. Like, I could show you. I have my handwriting is so illegible that I can't read it. Like, you'd be like, something's wrong with you. You need to go see someone. It's really bad. Like, it's so hard for me to write.
Yeah.
I'm a lefty. I don't know.
Oh, I'm left-handed too.
But I always am like, hear people talking about journaling, and I like roll my eyes, and I'm like partially envious. Because I'm like, how cool to have that discipline to like really sit down and journal. Like, I just finished a book. It's called Joy Hunter. Have you heard of it? Joy Hunter, Alexis Jones. And she apparently has been journaling since she was like wee big. And so her book, like, she had journal entries from herself to herself when she was like in 4th grade. I'm like, now how cool is that? I'm like, bitch, I should have kept doing, I should have journaled, you know?
I had journaled like on and off. And then I journaled a lot when I was going through the divorce. And it was just such a helpful way for me to like process my thoughts and like get them kind of out. And then I had like stopped journaling for a while. And then I started again during COVID, like very consistently journaling. And I was in a relationship that ended like last fall. But so we were in a relationship for like 3, almost 4 years. And the journaling was so helpful in that process, because then all of a sudden I could look back and say like, oh my gosh, I've been writing for like 2 years about how I think I need to not be in this relationship. But I don't know that I would have connected those dots that way had I not been able to go back and look at the journaling and realize like, wow, this is a really unhealthy dynamic. What are you doing?
How often do you go back to look? Like, how important is that part? Because I feel like that would be a really cool part of the process.
Yeah. So, gosh, that's a good question. I don't know that I have a set time. It's sort of when I think I just sometimes feel like I'm going to flip back and see.
Yeah.
I don't have like a set practice around it.
I would like to say right now you inspired me to journal, but you know what? I journal for like 2 seconds.
Okay, so there's another way you could. So I actually, my friends make fun of me because I have so many different kinds of journals that I am working through at any given time. So there's like the long form journaling, which I do that typically in the morning and at night. There's another kind of journal, though, that I also do every morning and night called the 5-minute journal. And it's a gratitude journal. Yeah. And I love that. So there's so much research about, like, if you can just, even in the worst days, you can find something to be grateful for, and how that, like, can help shift your whole mindset. And there's so many, like, physical benefits to it and all this stuff. So there's this 5-minute journal. And so every morning I write down 3 things that I'm grateful for, 3 things that would make today great, and a daily affirmation. And then at night when I get ready to go to bed, I write, I think it's like 3 things that went well today and 1 thing that I learned today. And so it literally takes you 5 minutes. Yeah. It's 1 line for each. Like, you're not writing sentences or paragraphs. It's just, and sometimes it's like, I'm grateful for hot tea on a cold day. Like, it doesn't have to be really profound. But that was helpful for me. And I think building the muscle of like consistently journaling. And then it went from that to then more like longer form journaling.
Now, Evan sees you do that, right? Does he do it? Does he pick up on it at all?
Sometimes he'll like kind of go in spurts. So every once in a while, but he's not like a consistent journaler. We talk a lot about like feelings in our house, and he does see me do like yoga and meditating, and he will meditate sometimes. Like, there'll be some times where he'll like be in the bath or the shower or whatever, and I'll like knock on the door and be like, hey, what are you doing? Like, you know, this is a really long shower. And he'll be like, I'm meditating, Mom.
Doesn't that make you proud?
Yeah.
You're like, I'm doing something right.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
That is amazing.
And so we'll talk about, you know, if you're feeling, you know, if we're frustrated or something like that, like, okay, maybe we need to take a few breaths.
Mm-hmm. So circling back around to something you said earlier about women being self-sufficient, and kind of seeing the world in a broader way, where it's like, you know, you can get married and stay at home and have kids, and that's great, and be in a traditional role, and that's awesome. But you have a ton of options, right? You can do anything you want to do, which is just, to me, such an empowering thing. I don't think enough women quite realize, you know, I think they do now more than ever. But being a female business owner, you know, understanding that, but also understanding the leadership styles of a woman can be different, right, than the traditional, what you see out there, this hard charging corporate, you know, boys club or whatever. And I bring that up because I came across that Forbes article that you were in when you were doing an acquisition with another female. And I read that, and it struck me, you know, I was like, that's really cool, and it needs to be discussed. It was just a very timely article for me to read. So I think we should hit on like the fact that there are ways to do business in the world that don't include sort of posturing, leaving things off the table, like not being transparent. And in fact, I feel like that style of business, once you lose trust, like once we no longer trust each other, that takes a second to happen, and it takes a really long time, if ever, to get back.
Yeah. So I think that one of the things I love about having Geben is the ability to show and live that there are different ways to run a business, and how people ran businesses in the 80s and 90s is not how we have to run businesses today. And we can prioritize people and relationships and values just as much as we're prioritizing profits and margins and revenue and all that kind of stuff. I don't think it has to be either or. I don't think you have to choose people or profits. I think you can do both. And so then when we were going through the acquisition process, it was really important to me to be very true to like values and the relationship piece of it, and not just, ram a deal through that at the end of it, would we feel really good about it, and would it create a good dynamic going forward?
But it took a lot of real communication, right? And kind of putting your cards on the table.
Yeah. I mean, so the person whose company I acquired, she and I had almost all of the communication was just us directly. Obviously we both had lawyers and we were talking to our lawyers separately, but instead of having the lawyers do everything, we did the communication. And I think that was really helpful for us to, I think the lawyers would have just gone about it a very different way than if we're just two people who are coming to the table who both have built businesses that we care very deeply about. And how do we make sure that this is a win-win situation for both of us, instead of, trying to figure out can I squeeze a little bit more out of this so that I can get the upper hand? That just didn't feel like a great way to enter into a new relationship.
Right. No, and I agree with that. So when you say prioritizing people and values and relationships over profits, and I couldn't agree more. That being said, so I come from corporate America. I was dog eat dog, IT, I ended up at AT&T. You couldn't get more corporate. And then coming to SOS, you're in this entrepreneurial, very touchy-feely thing. So I feel like having a foot in both worlds is very, very helpful. But what I've learned is leaning too much onto one side is too much.
So we are really clear about what do we stand for? What are our expectations? We have our house rules is what we call them. It's sort of the guiding philosophies of how we do business. We offer, we have really strong benefits. We offer, unlimited vacation time. We do a really generous, we take 20% of the company profits and put them into a bonus pool and share that out with everybody every year. So we have really great benefits. We offer paid leave for all new moms and new dads, whether they give birth or adopt, at 100% of their salary.
Yeah, when I was looking on your site and I was looking at the house rules, I mean, first of all, I like that it says house rules, but then you have a lot of really... I'm sure you can list them all, right?
Yeah, I don't know that I can do all of them.
Okay, just give me a top five.
So our favorite, I love, we've embrace the chaos. So things aren't always going to be easy and rainbows and sunshine, and we're in PR and social media. And so there are new things that happen or a crisis situation emerges, and our job is to be the calm in the chaos and to embrace what is in front of us and figure out how do we navigate through it best. No jerks allowed is a big one, right? We don't want to work with jerks. We don't want to work with people who seem kind of shady or have a bad product. And it goes internally and externally. We don't want clients that are jerks. We have fired clients because they're not being good partners. And that I have very low tolerance for. There's enough other work going around or out there that we can go get. We don't need to work with people who don't follow that house rule.
Yeah.
Partnering and connecting is our competitive edge is another one. And so we really try to be extensions of our client's team and find opportunities where we can connect dots. We get such joy out of if we can take this client over here and this client over here and connect them, and all of a sudden they can create a new program or maybe a special offering. And that's so fun. Or if we can connect a client who's trying to do, partner with a nonprofit, and we've got a nonprofit that we really believe in and trust, and we can connect them. And that's been nice. And the other one is do well by doing good is one that is a personal favorite of mine. So I learned, the agency that I worked for in Orlando was started by a woman who built the business doing a lot of work for nonprofits. And then the board members would then hire her agency to do really great work. And so I saw that you can prioritize doing good in the world and still use that as a path to doing well. And so do well by doing good is something that that we talk a lot about.
And that's been in you, right? Because when you started Geben, it was for nonprofit.
No, it wasn't for nonprofits. We've always done a lot of work. We've always done a lot of work with nonprofits, and the word Geben means to give, so it's been always baked into it. But we've always done for-profit and nonprofit.
But it's always kind of been in your like. So where does that come from?
I just think that businesses have a responsibility to do good in the world, and their nonprofits are a lot of times the like safety net and the backbone of the communities. And we have a responsibility to invest in those organizations that are doing really important work.
Now, could you ever see yourself actually running just a nonprofit? Could that be something in the future that you would ever?
Probably not. So I've served on like boards and stuff, and like, I know that committees are a very important part of nonprofits, but they also just drive me crazy sometimes. Like there is something to being the CEO of an organization. And I've never had a co-founder or a partner. I've never had investors. And so I've always been able to like see the path and make the decision. And I think I would struggle in an environment that had like everything had to be run by a committee.
Now, I don't disagree with you on that. Do you see a world in which you would take investors? Or do you like it kind of keeping it around this size where you can sort of have more control?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we've grown consistently, and I think that that's been great. I have like no desire to build like a 500 person agency. I don't need to do that. And I think, we made the one acquisition. Would we make another? I don't know. Maybe someday. I'm not sure. So we're very much in growth mode and want to think about like what are new products and services we can offer? What are other revenue streams we can create? So all of that matters a lot. But I don't know that I would want to take on investors and like give up equity and decision-making abilities.
I mean, you seem very strong in what you want and you feel like Is that so? Juan's helpful in this, right? So I need to call him.
Yeah, I mean, he's great in that. I mean, I think, so I don't know if you've ever done like the DISC assessment, like the communication style. Like I'm a high D, which is like that. My style is just, I don't need a lot of information to make a decision. I'm going to make a decision. I also view a lot of life as like just experimenting. So like you can almost like date an idea for a little bit. And so like, we're going to go down this path, try it. If it works, awesome. If not, that's okay. We'll learn something and we can try this other path.
Right. It's not that scary.
Yeah,
it's like, you're not an analysis paralysis person. You're like, okay, I'm going to go. Yeah. So has that hurt you in ways though, where you're like, okay, we're going to go. Do you have to like there's always like a negative side to that, right?
Yeah. I mean, so I have learned it is a strength of mine to be able to like quickly see and connect dots and make a decision. So I know that that's a strength of mine. I also know that sometimes that's not always, fast isn't always best. And so I have a person on my team, his name is Devin. He's our EVP at Geben, and he is a really good balance to me because he is very thoughtful and he's so smart and he asks really good questions. And so he's awesome at helping me go fast when I need to go fast and like kind of clearing out so I can go fast. And then also really good at saying like, hey, pump the brakes. We need to think about this a little bit more. So it's a perfect like partnership to help me like really think it through.
Yeah. Okay. So going back to Evan and being a single mom and like, once you get past the, this is the way life looks and now we're in a groove and here we are, there's got to be some upside too, because you have a great co-parent and Evan's super happy and in this nook. And then you also get to balance your life now, right? As a single woman, as a businesswoman, as Heather, the individual who gets to have some freedom and some time to be you.
Yeah, it took me a little bit to understand that, but I was able, because I used to get really upset when on like the weekends that I didn't have Evan, I would be so angry of like, why am I missing out on time when this wasn't my choice, right? And then I realized like, okay, again, accept what is, this is reality, like every other weekend is what it is. And so then I was able to reframe that perspective and say like, wait, now every other weekend, I can just do whatever I want. I can go out to eat, I can hang out with my girlfriends, I can travel, I can go to shows, like whatever I want to do every other weekend, I can go do. And then same thing during the week, Evan sleeps at his dad's house like 2 nights during the week. And so now all of a sudden, I just have every Wednesday, like every Tuesday and Wednesday night, I just have free. And so I can like go for a work, get a really great workout in or go out to dinner. And like, that is such a gift that like a lot of people don't have. It took me a while to get to that realization, but I think it is kind of the silver lining of co-parenting that you can have that balance. The other piece, I think, is that it also helps me be so much more present and engaged with Evan when I do have him, because I am very aware that I only am with him for half the week. So that half the week when I am with him, I am not working. Like, I don't do work. I don't do meetings. I don't do networking events. Like, I don't work on my nights I have Evan. On the weekends that I have Evan, we're like really focused on good quality time. Thankfully, quality time is both of our love languages. So we really prioritize that quality time together. And I think I see a lot of parents end up in a hard situation, especially like when they have their kids all the time. They, work kind of creeps into the evening hours a lot or on the weekends, and they don't, it's maybe sometimes harder to prioritize like having those boundaries and that quality time. Whereas I think the co-parenting piece for me forced me to get really clear on those boundaries.
And isn't that like, I think of it as like being highly concentrated. So like you're very aware, and those moments, there's a lot of juice there. And I do agree that like when you're kind of just pulled in every direction, you're not really being intentional. Like this situation forces you to be super intentional, and you're probably giving him like a better you, really, a more highly dialed in you. Yes. Isn't that, it's just so wild how life ends up working if you just allow it. If you just listen and pay attention.
Yeah, I think the idea of being really intentional with your time is something I think about a lot, because my, time and energy, I think, are like my two most precious resources, right? And so I'm super thoughtful about where am I spending my time and how can I fiercely protect my energy. And that time piece of it, when I'm with Evan, my time is especially valuable and critical. And then the time that I'm not with Evan, I can then like recharge my own batteries. Like, what brings me joy? What do I need to feel fulfilled and nourished and happy and energized? And I think a lot of times it's hard for parents. I think especially, if you don't get that kind of break, to be able to take that time just for yourself is really a gift that I recognize that I have that a lot of other people don't have.
And what do you ultimately need to feel those things? Like, are you, so at the end of the day,
journaling.
So Juan and some tea and a good journal.
That's really it.
That's it. Are you more of an introvert though when you're not with him? Like, do you like to be alone in terms of like, or are you like, I want to go out and like see people, go to dinner?
Oh no, I'm quite content like just sitting on my porch and reading my book and like not talking to another human.
Yeah. No, I feel you. I
am like naturally introverted. I don't mind people. I like people in small groups. So it's like I very much enjoy like one-on-one conversations or like small group conversations. I will never like willingly want to choose to go to like a networking event with 500 people. Like, no.
No, I totally feel you on that. So with co-parenting, do you and your ex-husband talk about like, okay, here are some like discipline pillars we're both in line on? Like, how do you, because I feel like that part to me, and it sounds like you guys have something really figured out, but that would be really hard. It's hard enough. So like for Brady and I, like you get on the same page when you're together and you see each other and you have that sphere of influence. How do you like do that when he's not in the same, just to make sure Evan's getting like a consistent message? Or
it's hard, right? Because he's not in my house, and so I don't really have, that's something that falls outside of my control. So there are pieces where like I think we do a pretty good job of like during school he has a consistent bedtime at both houses. So I think that's important. So we want to prioritize sleep, right? But like we don't have video games at my house. They have video games over there. And so there's a piece of that of like, I have no idea how much time he's spending over there, and they can use that as a part of discipline, whereas that's not an option for me here. So it's just two different environments. So there are some things that are just different between the two houses. And so, we'll talk sometimes about, hey, here's something that happened. And so here was the outcome or what we're doing. So we'll try to align on some things, but the reality is it's two different houses. And so it's two different parents, two different structures. And so there's some consistency, but I think that is a hard part. And Evan and I talk about that a lot, that I think it is hard for kids who have to go back and forth between two environments. And so we talk very openly about, we have like a transition time built in when he goes from like his dad's and then comes back to my house, of like just to give him time to reset. And so that first like 15, 20 minutes when we get back to my house, it's sort of like whatever it is that he needs to do in that time is fine. So if he needs screen time, fine. If he wants to go play basketball, fine. If he just wants to like sit in his room and read, that's fine too. And so there is that kind of before I start asking a bunch of questions about the weekend or, hey, what are we doing for dinner or whatever. So there is that kind of built-in transition time because I think it is hard going back and forth.
Now, are you a hard no on video games? Do you have like a stance on that?
So I think that video games, I would just rather Evan explore creativity and activity, like physical activity. There's so many other ways. And I think that, whether it's on phones or like Nintendo Switches or whatever, like those programs are designed to hook people in. And at a, 9, 10, 11 years old, kids' brain, they don't have the brain formation yet to be able to have the self-discipline to say, that's enough. I've been on my screen for long enough. And I just think there's so many other things that he could be doing. So it works out great that when he's at his dad's, he can get in his video game time and it's fun. But then when he's with me, it's just not even an option.
I'm so with you on that.
We don't worry about it.
And it's funny. I don't feel like I can really speak on it because my kid's 4.5 and it's like, okay, talk to me when he's 13, right?
Yeah.
But I'm with you on that. And I really admire that to just say no, and to give the reasons why and be like, look, there's so many other things that you could be doing. It bothers me. Like those games bother me. And especially the games that have guns and stuff.
Yeah, so that's a hard pass.
Yeah, I just don't understand how in this world today, how you can even make sense of that in any way, shape, just the principle of it.
We do. So he has there's some games on his computer that he likes to play, like on his laptop for school that he likes to play. And then there are some, he has like an iPod. And so he likes Roblox, right?
Yeah.
So, but screen time in our house is you get an hour a day of screen time total. So that's TV, computer, Roblox, whatever, 1 hour. And so if you want to watch one show and that's 30 minutes and you only have 30 minutes left, and we are really serious about that. Or if you want to watch an hour show, then that's it. You get no other game time. But we don't have any of the Nintendo or any of the video game console
Is there any
stuff.
earning more screen time? Do you do any of that?
No.
Is there any, do you do chores?
Kind of, but it's not tied to that. So I think that chores are you live in the house. And so if
that's what
I
my
need
friend Jamie
someone to help take out the recycling, then help take out the recycling. Or if your room is a disaster, clean up your room. Because I don't want to
earn your keep around here. That's what my friend Jamie is like. I just, absolutely not. We're not going to pay them an allowance.
Yeah.
They're paying to, they're doing this to live here.
Yes.
Which is definitely a thought to me where I'm like, okay, that makes, because, I would go immediately towards trying to get Dane to understand how to earn money and but you can do that in other ways.
Yes, so we do that. So Evan, a couple years ago, because I do strategic planning for myself in addition to the business. So I set my own strategic plan each year, and I'm trying to introduce some of those ideas to Evan. And so we had gone for a walk on New Year's Day. And so I was talking about well, what do you want this year? What would a goal look like for you? And he was 7, I think. And he told me he wanted more financial freedom. And I was like, what the heck am I doing with this?
That's amazing.
And so we talked about then well, why do you want financial freedom? Why do you need money? What is it that you want? And so we set up this sort of structure then, whereas he gets money, he can spend a percentage of it. So he's got 3 jars basically. There's a spend jar, a save jar, and a give jar. And so he gets the money and he divides it up. And that's been pretty good. It's not it's a consistent, we're every week I give him $5 a week that he puts in the jar. But there will be some times, especially if I hate weeding, I hate any kind of outdoor yard work stuff. So there have been some times where I was hey, if you help me with this extra yard work project, I'll give you $5 or $10 or whatever. And then that money he can take and divide up in his jars. But it's not a standing chore. And it truly was optional. If he didn't want to do it, that's okay too. But if you want to earn money, here's a way you can earn money. And then let's talk about how to responsibly save our money and how do we do good in the world with our money and how do we spend money on things that bring us joy.
I love the give jar.
It helps kid, I want him to learn. So the thing that I say all the time, I say it at work and I say it at home. If you have the ability to help, you have a responsibility to help. And he is a privileged kid. We live a pretty good life. We have the ability to help. And so then we should do that. And I think if kids can learn that from the get-go, then that just becomes a natural part of how they see the world.
Well, I'm going to dog ear that page in your book. That's a good one. Thanks. So what was your strategic plan for 2023?
Yeah.
Personal.
Yeah. So it's funny because the last couple of years, the strategic planning process has been interesting. And I had done the strategic plan. So 2 years ago, I did the plan, ended up not actually really liking the plan. Again, going back to this relationship I was in that I think maybe colored how some of that planning came to be. So this year was really nice where I was able to like really focus on the plan. And so it's around like building deeper relationships. So as much as introverted as I am, like I really value deep connections with people. So I really wanted to build deeper relationships. I wanted to invest in impact. So when I think about whether I'm investing, so I just started doing a little bit of angel investing. So whether I'm investing in for-profit companies or thinking about nonprofits that I want to be donating to, really focusing on like where can my dollars have the most impact. I also really want to focus on like my own like wellness and just, you know, making sure that I'm taking care of myself. I had done this strategic plan, I think like 2 or 3 years ago, and I had nothing on there about my own wellness. It was all about like, how was I showing up for everybody else? Yeah. And then I realized like, that's not good. So now the plan has a section on there about like kind of me and myself. And then also like kind of elevating Geben to the next level and where are we now and how do we get to where we want to go?
And for the like, you know, basic dummy out there like me, when you hear strategic plan, you know, and you hear you just sound, you know, you're very sophisticated and smart. But for some like rando out there who's like, I just need to kind of get my life in order a little bit, or maybe start happening to things as opposed to things happening to me. You're basically sitting down with yourself and creating goals for your life, right? Now,
yes and no.
Well, so hold on, because with you, I feel like there may be like, but just walk someone through what that can look like for them.
So my friends Phil and Krista have a company called Owl and Key.
Okay.
And their product is lifestyle design. And they have this thing called strategic planning for life. And they have a book that you can get on Amazon. So it's like very accessible to anybody. But what I really appreciate about their process is it starts by defining your values. So what are the things that actually matter to you? What are your intentions for, you know, the next 3 years or 5 years of your life or whatever? But like, what are your intentions? And then how do you break that into what you want your strategic plan to look like? The piece of the plan that I love the most is called the absurd list. So you go through this whole process, and then one of the exercises before you like start actually putting actions to your plan is to do this absurd list. And the idea is remove all the barriers, any budgetary constraints, time constraints, any of the like naysaying or negativity in your head. Remove all of those barriers and just write down, what do you want to accomplish over the next 12 months? That exercise ends up being the most powerful part every time for me, because it's these things that feel like they're so absurd. But once you put it on paper and start to think about like, well, maybe I can create a little bit of steps towards that, it's not actually so absurd. So the business acquisition was on my absurd list in December of 2020. I was trying to think about like, December 2020, we're coming out of COVID. How do I like kickstart the company? And I was making my absurd list. And one of the ideas was like, well, maybe I could acquire a company. I had never before thought that we would make an acquisition. That just seemed really absurd to me. That was in December. And by May, I had closed on the deal and bought a company.
Speaking of that, because that's very impressive, by the way.
It was quick.
Yeah. And so it really does show you that like those absurd things actually, when you put them into play, they can all of a sudden, it's like, whoa, that happened.
Yes. And not to sound like too woo-woo-y, but there is something about like once you speak it to the universe, all of a sudden you see it differently and you start to see doors opening differently.
So when you put that on your absurd list, did you then start to go out and look, or did this drop in your, like, how did you find this company?
So one of the goals for that year was to really elevate Geben, I think, or kickstart Geben's growth. I forget exactly the phrasing I landed on. But so part of that was like, well, one of the ideas was like, well, maybe I could explore what it would look like to make an acquisition. I also explored like maybe I needed to hire a sales team, or, you know, so I there were a bunch of different things that I explored. That idea of exploring an acquisition wouldn't have ever been in the list, or in my view, had I not done the absurd list. But I started putting out, you know, having some initial conversations and putting out some feelers. And then all of a sudden it became like a really reasonable idea. And at that time, the government was like basically giving away money because they were trying to like kickstart the economy. And so there were small business loans that were available for super low interest. And so all of a sudden the funding became very easy in a way that like it would be much more difficult to do that now. So it was sort of like things fell into place and then it happened.
What was it about that company that was sort of complementary that made them attractive to you?
Yeah, so they specialized in national social impact work. So they really focused on mission-driven nonprofit work. We had done a lot of that work, and so it was a nice kind of add-on to take something that we have done historically and elevate it even more.
And so it's been a good decision.
Yeah,
Success.
I mean, the goal was to really help kickstart our growth coming out of Geben, or coming out of COVID, and we've had our, if you look at where our revenue was in 2019 to where it was last year, we've more than doubled in that time.
That's amazing.
So mission accomplished.
Very, very cool. That's just really commendable.
Thanks.
And it just, I feel like, I've learned a lot from you today, by the way.
Thanks.
I'm like,
I can sit and chat like this all day.
Let me take some more nugs over here from Heather, right? I mean, it really is amazing and so interesting to sit down with people like this, because it's like, you really uncover some of these moments or these aha moments where you're like, it's simple sometimes. Like we complicate things, by, for example, not creating a strategic plan. By not doing that, by not sitting down, you're making things more complicated because you're just kind of like rolling through your life, right?
Right.
But really to sit down with it and design it.
Right, like design the life. Like, what is the life that you want to live? And then design it.
I love that.
We all have business plans, right? Like you wouldn't go into a new year at your business and not have a plan.
You're so right.
And so if we know that something works so well in a business, why wouldn't we also take that best practice and incorporate it into our own lives?
Yeah. That's why I always think about like values.
Yes.
When I talk to my husband and I'm like, I want Dane and this newbie coming along, I want them to have something to march to.
Yeah.
And whether it's one, like my friend Molly, she's like, my one thing is be kind. I want my kids to be kind. And she does all kinds of, she's just an amazing human, but that's her thing. Right. And they know that. And you can just watch these kids and they are, they're helpers, they're servant leaders already, and they're young and they're kind.
Yeah.
But it's because you put it out there and you have something for them to sort of look to. Yeah. I think that's what I've learned most about you today. Truly, like you really gave me this. I don't do that well enough. Like so I don't journal, right? I think I have a plan personally, and I think I do have goals, and I actually do have goals. But I need to be more. I need to get that book, and I need to actually I am going to commit to that part. I'm going to get that book, and I'm going to start doing it that way, because I think that's really. It was very eye-opening for me. That's something I need to start doing.
And I think the thing I like about it is it's different than New Year's resolutions that like you make in January, and then by the end of January, you're not paying attention to it anyway. Like this it's a little bit of a structure so that it's built in. So I do like quarterly check-ins with myself of like, how am I progressing towards my plan? Just like you would do in a business.
Of course you do.
It's actually really fun. I like rent myself an Airbnb like in the middle of nowhere in Hocking Hills or something. And I like take myself out. You go on business retreats. So why not do a personal planning retreat?
I actually thought about that. It's funny you mentioned that. I thought about doing that.
Do it
the other day.
It's so great.
I was, hypothesizing about, and I'm like, you could just like go out in the woods and like, now, do you put this in your calendar? Like you have it on your phone as a reminder for your quarterly? Like you're a good compliment to me. Like I need to like,
so I try to like every quarter. So I don't necessarily go to like Hocking Hills every quarter. I'll probably do that like twice a year, and then at the end of the year I take myself on I go there's this wellness resort in Miami that I go to every year where I do my full planning. Now I've done it for the last 3 years, so I have some of that, but I will do, even if I can't go to like Hocking Hills I'll go like take myself out to dinner or go to a coffee shop or something, and sometimes just changing your environment changes your energy. And I think if you can just change your environment enough, like don't do it like at home when you've also got laundry that needs to get put away in a dishwasher that needs to get unloaded. Like go somewhere else and really focus on like, what is it that you want to be doing and accomplishing, and how do you want to feel as you're going through the day or the year, and have that dedicated time to help yourself so that you can make sure that the things that are your values or the things that you really want to accomplish, that you're designing your life around that, instead of letting whoever's at the top of your inbox dictate how your day is going to go.
And with that, folks, the mic just dropped. And if you don't take any nuggets out of today, I can't really help you. Heather, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
That was really great. It was an hour and 3 minutes that went by like that.
Oh my gosh, that went fast.
And where can people follow you? What's your Insta handle?
Yep. So I'm at Heather_Whaling on Instagram and Threads. If people have created Threads accounts, the new app, you can get me there too, or just Heather Whaling on LinkedIn.
All right. And with that, guys, follow me on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you find your podcasts. And until next time, stay organized, journal, call Juan, and keep moving. Oh my God, that was good. I had like 10 aha moments there. Oh.